We spend a lot of time in our hiring process to try and figure that out about each candidate. Like, would they be a good fit in that environment? Because for some people, it's a great fit, and for some people, it just isn't. And one of the red flags that we will take a look at closely is we'll look at the work history one. Like, what has their environment been to date? Have they been in on-site every job? Have they never done remote work before? That's a big red flag, and we'll talk about that quite a bit. We're 100% honest with people. We bring out the downsides to 100% remote. Like, hey, it can be very lonely.
Welcome to SaaS That App, building B2B Web Applications, the podcast where we share real-world stories, practical advice, and tech insights for those building or thinking about starting a tech-enabled business. I am your co-host, Aaron Marchbanks.
And I'm Justin Edwards. Each week we bring you the stories, strategies, and insights you need to build your SaaS or tech-enabled business smarter, not harder. Let's dive right in.
Hello, and welcome back to SaaS That App. Well, once again, I am without my co-pilot here. Justin is still traveling the world. I believe he's in Southeast Asia still. But you're just stuck with me, Aaron Marchbanks, as always. But I am joined today by Ben Curtis. We're welcoming him to the show. He is the co-founder of Honeybadger.io, which is a standout application monitoring service that helps developers fix errors, optimize performance, maintain reliable products for their customers. So we're going to get into that some today. He is also serving as president of Tesla Inc., helping business owners create custom web and mobile applications. He is the founder of Catch the Best, which streamlines recruitment processes for hiring managers. So in general, deep technical background, passion for helping teams scale. Ben is an expert in turning ideas into successful tech products as well. So Ben, welcome to the pod.
Thanks. Happy to be here.
So I'm always interested in how people get to where they're at, what their background is, the course that they've taken. So you've obviously done a lot of different things in the course of your career, a lot of roles, co-founding Honeybadger, obviously, advising business owners with Tesla, developing tools with Catch the Best. So what sparked your journey into tech entrepreneurship in this space?
A TRS 80 when I was 8 years old
Yes!
sparked my journey.
Oh my gosh, yes.
I think that's common amongst our generation.
I think it is.
But yeah, copying programs out of those computer magazines and
Yes.
seeing them. Yeah, that's what got me started. I'm a self-taught developer. I just love technology and really been doing it since then. I grew up on the BBS scene and loved that and just been doing technology ever since I was a kid. And as I got into college, went to computer science. I thought that was going to be what I wanted to do. And then I decided that I really hated math. So I did what a lot of college science dropouts do and went to the business school instead. And I got an information systems degree. And that actually turned out really well because I got the accounting and the econ and all the businessy stuff from my undergrad. And then I did the technology stuff on my own. That was self-taught. So it's a pretty good combo. It's worked out for me. And then worked for a bunch of startups and done my own things for now, about 20 some odd years. So it's been a fun ride.
That's awesome. I have a similar journey, although I didn't go the business route. I went the music route.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, started in computer science, but felt better about learning and doing that on my own. And because I'm a theater person, also, I had so many credits in music. It's like, you know what? I'm just going to bang out a music degree here because I love it. And then I can do the tech stuff as I'm going along. So yeah. It seems to be a very common thing, like you said, for everybody kind of going through that computer science process and finding other interests that actually may help them even better. And the technology is always going to be there to learn. So
what's your preferred instrument?
I am a vocalist by trade, but I also play piano, guitar, little alto saxophone. Mainly, I accompany my amazing vocalists, which are my wife and my daughter. They're just like top tier. So I'm at best like fourth in the house behind the dog in terms of the talent level there. But I do enjoy getting to do it, and it's super fun. I actually had initially thought I was going to do education, so music education, and I haven't really gone much further down that path, but I have directed some choirs and things like that. And so that's been a fun use of that in addition to just the personal stuff.
Yeah.
So I want to get into Honeybadger just right at the top. I know it's the most current thing. It's what you're most involved in right now. I'm interested to know several things about it, but initially, what was the issue or the problem or the approach that you were trying to solve with Honeybadger?
Yeah, well, Honeybadger wasn't this brand new idea that came out of nothing. There were other products on the market that were doing what Honeybadger does. And that's really what started Honeybadger. So we were using Airbrake, Star and I, we were building a Rails app and we were using Airbrake like a lot of Rails developers did back in those days. And the problem was that Thoughtbot had created it and then sold it to some investors who were just, running it as a cash machine, basically, weren't putting a whole lot of effort into it. And it was just broken in a few different ways. And one day I just got frustrated with it. And I'm like, I turned to Star and I said, you know what? We can do better. And we deserve better as developers. We should have awesome tools, right? And so that was really the genesis for the products. It was like, we knew that we could build something like that, but we also knew that we could provide an awesome customer experience that we weren't getting. And that was really what we wanted to focus on. So nights and weekends, started writing the code and got started, and within a few months had it launched and got, customers right off the bat. So that was cool. But it's been really awesome to be able to support developers like us having a better day than we had that day.
For sure. What did that MVP look like? What did that first iteration look like?
Yeah, it was really just exception tracking. I mean, in fact, we borrowed the air brake gem because, it's open source. And so we're like, hey, well, why don't we just make our endpoint the same, accept the same payloads? So you could just plug the air brake gem and just change the endpoint to Honeybadger, and took in an error, and then it grouped it and gave you back an exception and gave you a notification. And then that was that, like straight into the database, no queues, no scaling. Is like one server. It was definitely a duct tape kind of solution, just getting us started. But we figured if we had something that worked for us, then other people would also like it. And so we definitely built it for ourselves. And when it got to the point where we were using it on the daily basis, then we thought, let's bring some friends and family in, and yeah, something from there.
So on the business side of that, I mean, what was the guiding principle or the guiding value for, you're obviously adding this as a service. You're wanting to have really great customer service. You're trying to fill a gap in some technology, something that's a little bit more meaningful. So when you get into like ideas of pricing structure and the service model itself, talk to me a little bit about that decision process in terms of how you brought people on initially, how that led you to where you are now in terms of the service model or the cost model.
Yeah, so Honeybadger has been, since the beginning, usage-based billing. So it's however much volume you send. We actually launched with unlimited traffic. You could send as many exceptions as you wanted. And we decided to do the pricing based on the number of projects that you would have. Because one of the things that kind of bugged us about the current pricing models of competitors at the time was that they were based on a per minute throttle. And so as soon as your app blows up with a bunch of errors, all of a sudden you're hitting API limits from your error catching service, right? And we thought, well, that doesn't help me, right? And when I'm having a bad day, I want my service to not stop on me, right? So we thought, okay, let's take a different approach. Let's bill based on number of projects rather than based on the number of errors coming in. And we found out there's a reason why you bill on the number of errors coming in. Because we quickly got customers who were sending way, way too much data for us to be able to handle in a reasonable way. And so, yeah, it didn't take us long for us to figure out that we had to change that pricing model. And when we did, that definitely changed the revenue curve. So yeah, that was one of those, okay, I see why they did it that way. But it did inform our eventual pricing, which was to not do API limits based on like a per minute or per hour thing, but to kind of extend it out to a month. And again, back to that customer service thing, even if we had customers who hit their monthly limits, we built in like plenty of warnings around, hey, you're getting close to your limits. And then we allowed for them to go over. So we didn't stop at 100%. We just started throttling at 100% and let them go to 125%. And then even if a customer got to that point and like emailed us and said, oh, look, I had a really bad day, but now it's gotten back to normal. Can I have a break on my quota this month? I mean, 99% of the time we'd say, yeah, sure, no problem. We would just turn off the quota checks for them for that month. So that's part of like our philosophy. Like we want to support you as a developer. If you're having a bad day, we don't want to add to that badness by turning off your error tracking, right? We don't want to give you a hard time about that. So that's worked out pretty well. I think people really respond to that. They can reach out and get a person and usually get one of the co-founders to respond. And that's been good. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, in addition to the error tracking, you also do like APM work, application performance monitoring, things along those lines. Was that like a conscious decision? Was that something you kind of backed into, or was that like on the roadmap all along?
We've decided that we wanted to build the tool that we want. Like that's how we started, and that's how we've kept operating, in the past 13 years. And we wanted that kind of tool along with exception monitoring. We felt like there's a value in having everything you need in one app. Like you don't have to plug in a bunch of different things. You don't have to be switching from app to app. And so that's why we, over time, we added the uptime monitoring, we added the cron monitoring, and more recently, the application monitoring, the log monitoring, is because it felt like you want to be in one app where you can see all the things related to the health of your application. So if you're a developer, you can know, hey, I can just go to Honeybadger and I get everything I need to see about how my app's doing in production. So that's what we wanted. And bonus points, we had customers that actually want that too. So
yeah.
That worked out.
It's always nice when you look at the customers and the clients got to drive that too.
Right.
So kind of beyond the monitoring, what kind of other tools or processes do you see product-focused dev teams using to just ensure that their applications are remaining reliable and performant and are keeping their customers happy?
Yeah, we totally see our customers using us along with, Datadog or New Relic or other of those tools that have a bit more on the APM side. Like we don't want to replace them, but some of them find those kind of tools overwhelming, or maybe it's their ops team that's really heavily using those tools and they're just drug along. So we're trying to provide like maybe a Datadog Lite or a New Relic Lite. Like what are the basic tools, the charts and whatever kind of logging stuff that you could use that won't feel overwhelming, won't feel like you're getting buried by charts and that sort of thing. So we find like a lot of our customers like that combo, like using us with them, and they get a lot of the performance stuff from those apps and then come back to us for seeing like what's a hot issue right now. Maybe they're reviewing the charts over there every once in a while, but in their day-to-day workflow, when something blows up, they're looking at Honeybadger and seeing how they can help their customers.
That's awesome. Are there any plans for Honeybadger to leverage AI? I know it's a very hot topic these days for integration, if nothing else, but a lot of people are incorporating it into applications. You have visions for that? And, what kind of ways would you see that happening?
Yeah, we've had some fun experimenting with AI on our side and using it to help us build our app. We have some ideas for how we could do some more integration with AI inside the app. A few weeks ago, we launched an MCP server so that if you're sitting in your editor and you've got a question about an error that happened, you can actually ask the AI, hey, go tell me about the context of this error and help me solve this error, right? That's a lot of fun. That's really cool. You can just pull that right into your editor. And we also want to do some more server-side stuff, but we have to be very careful because there's a lot of sensitive data that people send with their exceptions. There's their own customer data is coming in or things like that. And so we don't want to be like sending data to whatever random AI machine that you don't know about, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, we're taking a measured approach, but we do think there are ways that we can bring in some custom models and train them on your data and give you some suggestions on how you can resolve the errors that you're encountering.
Fantastic. Well, thinking about the compliance and data privacy and things like that, obviously big trends emerging all over the place relating to AI, certainly, but just in general, data privacy and infrastructure and that sort of thing. I think I'm correct that you all recently launched like an EU data region just to help with GDPR compliance and things like that. What have you learned from that, or what other things are you doing here to better align with the EU stuff?
Yeah, I think some of the things we've learned is there are different use cases for why you might have a data locality preference, right? There might be issues around, well, we don't want our data to be touched by anybody in the US for, political reasons, right? And so in that case, an EU stack by an American company like us may not be sufficient for that kind of use case, right? Because they don't want any kind of possibility that it's going to touch US soil, right? But for some customers, it's like, well, I just want the proximity. I want the faster response time, or it's enough of a guarantee for me to have my data based in the EU, even if the company that runs this instance is in the US, or we're hosted on Amazon, right? So it's also a US company. So it's interesting. What I've learned is that there are these fine-grained details that some people care about this thing and some people care about that thing. And so it's not a panacea to have a separate stack that's running in the EU if you're a US-based company, but it does help, for certain use cases. And we find that customers have really enjoyed that. We have a number of our customers who have been around for a long time, and they're like, oh, as soon as we launch the EU, they're excited to jump over and to have their data there. But overall, it's been a pretty smooth process. Like GDPR hasn't been a huge deal for us because we are so concerned about, privacy and maintaining our customers' data in a secure way. Again, we're hosted with AWS. They have some very strong guarantees around their systems and their services. And we've spent a lot of time becoming SOC 2 compliant and going through all that kind of stuff to reassure our customers like, hey, we're treating your data well. So it's all part of that.
For sure. Interesting. Well, I want to teeter into Tesla a little bit. Obviously, you've done a lot of work there helping entrepreneurs turn their ideas into something successful, whether it's a business or a mobile application or things along those lines. And we've had a number of guests on the show that like to talk a lot about values, company values, alignment with the team and those values, and alignment with the product or products and those values. So I'm curious how you approach taking a founder, getting them to a vision or helping to understand what their vision is, and then translating that into the technical feasibility while also still maintaining like what you have, this high quality experience for users in a production environment.
That's a great question. I encountered a lot of founders who, they're not technical. They're looking to get from 0 to 1. They have an idea. They want to see that idea become a reality. And they really have no preconceived notions about a technology stack or an implementation. There's a thing they want to see in the world, and they need someone to help them bring that vision to reality. And so they'll come to me usually when they're considering, how do I even get started with this? Like, what do I do? Like, what's my next step? And they may have had friends tell them, oh, you get some team in India to build your thing for you and you don't have to worry about it. Or they may have had someone tell them, oh, you need to get a co-founder who can help you take care of all that technology stuff. And so usually what I like to do is sit down with someone and see where they are on that spectrum. What kind of options are they considering? What have they been told and what are they thinking about? And then help them evaluate the different options, like from where they are, what their experience is, and how much they want to get involved. Some entrepreneurs, they want to learn the code, right? Hey, I want to get in there and I want to build it myself. I'm like, okay, that's fine. There's a certain path for that.
That's a choice. Yeah.
Yeah. It might take a little longer than you're thinking. And I think sitting down and helping understand what someone's motivations are, what their goals are, is really what my job is. And then from there, we can say, okay, how do we move forward with this? Do we hire an agency who has a ready-made group of people who are ready to go and it can build your app for you? Do we go with that outsource team in India because whatever, maybe the scale of what you're trying to build or whatever reasons you have? Or do we start a CTO search, right? And find, that person for you that can really be with you the whole thing. I think most people, when they get off, that first call with me, they think, oh, okay, this guy actually is concerned about me being successful and not just, taking my money and building something, right? So I love that. I love that process. I love helping entrepreneurs find the way to get their passion and to made into reality.
Do you find that founders, and obviously I know that this will depend heavily on, are they a more technical founder or are they coming from just like an idea or an entrepreneurship type background? But do you find that almost regardless of that founders tend to focus or be more concerned about the technology and basically like the end result or MVP versus customer experience? Or do you find that the customer experience is the guiding force and the rest I don't really care so much about? I just wanted to hit these experience marks for my clients. And how do you kind of guide them to one or the other where the importance really does lie?
Yeah, I'd say it's probably more the latter. It's like, I want this experience and I don't really care so much about the technology choices. Of course, there's always, it's got to run on an Apple device. I've got to be on my iPhone, right? But if it's a web app, I don't care if it's Django or Rails or .NET. It doesn't matter to me. And it really shouldn't, because all technologies can get you there for most apps. And usually what I do is I sit down with the person and say, well, depending on what kind of approach you want to take, like if we're going to go with an agency or solo freelancer or whatever, if you're going to hand off that responsibility to that person or people, just trust them enough to do whatever they say, right? If you pick an agency and you're thinking, oh, I want a Rails app, and the agency's like, well, we build Elixir and that's all we do, and you like this agency, well, then you should let them build you an Elixir app. Don't, insist that they build you a Rails app because you heard that Rails is cool, right? That's what I try to focus on. It's like the people really drive the process, not a particular technology.
I love that. And I've heard it both ways. I hear more toward the side that you're kind of advocating for, where it's more about the user experience and the end result. And if you find a team or a company or a hire or a CTO that you like, go with where that expertise is, because that's what's going to give you the best experience in the end anyway. But I think that's fantastic advice. So looking at balancing then these technical solutions with the business product itself, how do you help coach these founders, these entrepreneurs in balancing the solution that they're given in whatever technology or stack it happens to be, and ensuring that the business and the product outcome also is good, the give and take that has to come with those?
Yeah, that's a tougher one, because typically they're going to come with very little experience on what it means to run a business, to shepherd a product. And they may have had some project management experience oftentimes, but product management is kind of a different story. And I think I spend some of my time educating them on how to be flexible, especially when working with a team where you don't understand the technology as much. There's a give and take there, right? You might say, well, I want to have the world and I want it ready in 2 weeks. And it's like, okay, well, let me introduce you to the iron triangle.
Yes.
And then walk through that. Like, where are your priorities? Where can you give up some, versus what are things that have to be? And then also walk through, okay, once you have this app or this product, it's going to take some maintenance. It's going to take some love and TLC, right? It's not just one and done kind of thing. I can't remember where I saw this recently, but it was great. It was talking about how some people say like software rots, it just gets old and it breaks. And this person said, no, that's not quite right. It doesn't really rot. It's more like a book where it just gets out of date, right? The book doesn't change. The content in the book doesn't change, but the world around the book changes and maybe makes it obsolete or, not quite current. And I really like that idea. Like, that software is also like a book, right? You get it out there, but the world around it is always changing. And so it's not just shoot it out there and forget about it. This is going to be something that's ongoing. And that, of course, also impacts, do you choose the CTO versus the agency versus the freelancer and blah, 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 blah. So It's a lot. I think my job is to be that expert and, hey, I've been there, I've done that, and here are some things that you should watch out for and some things you should consider as you embark upon this road of online entrepreneurship.
Sure. In that vein, what would you say is the piece of advice you give the most in that regard? Like, what is the number one, let's call it pitfall to avoid or thing that you want to impart to one of these people who are just starting this out?
I always like to remind people it's going to take longer and cost more than you expect.
That's a good thing to get out of the way right up front.
Yeah. And nobody wants to hear that, right? But yeah, if you get that out up front, then at least they're prepared for, okay, I realize that if I ask for the world, it's going to, and my favorite phrase is anything is possible given enough time and money, right? Because the client comes to us, hey, can we do this? Can we do that? Can we do this other thing? Yeah, yes, we can do all those things, but how much time and money do I have to do all those things? That's the key. So yeah, I think that's important to get that out of the way first, and then help them understand why. Like, why do things take longer and cost more than I think they should? Why is it not just a Jiffy Lube visit that gets my oil changed, right?
Right. Oh, that's great. So we're past the founder now. We've got something that's off the ground. It's an MVP. Maybe it's a little even more mature. And we're shifting into kind of like team building now at this point, right? Okay, so this thing is getting some legs. Maybe you're at the point of debating between hiring development staff or a development team in-house versus, utilizing a third party. Or maybe you are, at the point where you do need to bring on another owner, another founder, another top tier talent or something along those lines. So I know that you've done some of this at like Catch the Best, you built and scaled teams, but what would you say then to those founders or to those entrepreneurs who are kind of at that point in their development or life cycle of the product, who are considering hire in-house or continue to go with a third party? And then what do you help coach them on what to look for in developers who are going to be strong at keeping this good customer experience and keeping these systems reliable?
Yeah, I would want to evaluate where they like spending their time. If you feel like as a founder, you are a people person and you love the idea of managing teams, then, that can lean towards hiring for sure. But if you're the kind of founder that doesn't want to be dealing with that wants to be out there selling, and pushing the product, then maybe it makes more sense to have that team that's independent, who's managed for you by that agency lead or whatever. I've seen it work well both ways. I don't think there's a right answer. It really just whatever suits, I think, the personality of the people involved. If you have a great technical co-founder, it's so much easier to have that in-house team because that technical co-founder can manage them and can manage the quality of the product. But if you don't have that, then that kind of pushes you towards the agency is probably a better way to go for you because you want to have that expertise, have someone on top of that for you. So play to your strengths. Don't try to be what you're not. Just realize what you're good at and double down on that.
That's great. Play to your strengths. Always good. So looking at then whether it's outsourced or insourced, as it were, obviously we're in a much more globally connected world right now. Remote work is the norm and probably has been since well before it was cool. I'm thinking like, pre-COVID days. I know the company that I work for, we've been remote, and that's usually what I say, is since well before it was cool, fully remote. But that's a lot of these days, especially when you're hiring new talent or young talent, people who are coming up. It's almost a requirement. I want to be able to live where I want to live and work for you and still do the things that I do. And I'm curious what you've run into in terms of like recruiting that type of team or that type of talent. Again, whether it be, an agency or someone internally with kind of this norm as it has become now.
Yeah, I've done it both ways where I've managed a team we're all in the same room. And Honeybadger is the opposite, where we've been 100% remote for the entire life of the business. And both have their advantages and both have their disadvantages. And I think you need to think about the composition of your team. Are you looking to hire people that have deep experience and who work well independently and they're self-motivated, I guess, have that intrinsic motivation? That's a great situation for remote, right? They can work independently, and we've loved that at Honeybadger. Like we can go off and spend days in our hole, building stuff. It helps that we're a developer tool, right? So it's building stuff for developers by developers. But if you really thrive on the community of people working together, if you want to hire more junior level people, I've seen that be very difficult in the remote thing, where it's much better to keep everyone in the same room for that. Because if you're trying to bring up someone who doesn't have as much experience, they need that interaction on a regular basis. You don't want them going off for a few days, getting lost in the weeds where they just feel like they don't know what's going on, right? And the collaboration thing is real. There's a real benefit to being around the whiteboard. There's definitely a quickness. So if your product is like, hey, we're trying to beat 5 other competitors for world domination, and we go, well, that's a good use case for having people in the same room because you get things done much faster, right? So I think, again, it depends on the situation and the people involved. But you also have to, again, play to what you like, right? I like being in my own office, having everything quiet and not having a bunch of interruptions. So a remote company works for me.
Yeah, my balancing act is, so much of what I do, and I'm going to call it my day job, which sadly is not podcasting, revolves around, managing teams and helping people, making sure that people are unblocked. They have the tools that they need. They have, whatever it is that makes them feel like they enjoy what it is that they're doing, but also the people that they're doing it with. And then trying to attack that from the angle of everybody's remote. More often than not, the closest thing that you get is a very fun Google Meet with like 10 people in it, or even 4 people in it, so that you don't feel like you're in a silo. But you had talked about, Honeybadger, the company culture there with being remote since the start. I'm just kind of curious, what do you look for when you're trying to assess a new hire, a new developer, somebody who's wanting to come in, likes the company, is interested in the culture, loves the remote work, but you already know there are certain things that I'm going to have to be able to count on about you. It takes a certain amount of discipline. It takes a certain amount of skill to be able to do that. And it still does take a certain amount of checking in and meeting with team members. So how do you go about, one, attracting the right kind of talent that you're looking for, and 2, assessing it when it shows up at your doorstep?
We spend a lot of time in our hiring process to try and figure that out about each candidate. Like, would they be a good fit in that environment? Because for some people, it's a great fit, and for some people, it just isn't. And one of the red flags that we will take a look at closely is we'll look at the work history one. Like, what has their environment been to date? Have they been in on-site every job? Have they never done remote work before? That's a big red flag. And we'll talk about that quite a bit. We're 100% honest with people. We bring out the downsides to 100% remote. Like, hey, it can be very lonely. You might find that you're not getting out of the house. You're not talking to anybody. And we ask, you're not supposed to ask certain questions about people, but we say things like, do you have a community of people that you're talking to, in person on a regular basis? Whether it be church or family or friends or whatever it is, I don't care what it is, but do you have some connection with humans outside of work, right? And if not, that's a red flag, because I don't want someone who gets into this not knowing what to expect and realizing, oh, what, now I'm majorly depressed because I'm just looking at the 4 walls and haven't showered in 4 days, right? So we talk a lot about that during the hiring process. But, for people who have done it, who have been working remotely for a long time, they get it. They already know it. They've already built their systems for coping with that kind of isolation or potential. And so it's like, okay, we can gloss over that. That's fine. But the same is true, I think, for relative size of a company, right? If we're looking to hire someone who has been working at a huge business, maybe hundreds or thousands of employees, and we are 4 employees, that's a very big difference, right? Are you going to fit well in that scenario? We have had bad hires who we didn't pay as close attention to that, and they had a lot of support in their previous very large organization. And when they got to us, they're like, oh, I don't know how to do anything because I don't have, 20 people I can rely on to do all the various things, right? So I think you got to take a lot of time during a hiring process to really talk to people. And we also spend time not talking to them, but just interacting via email. And we have oftentimes have a test project where we want to see what the writing is like. Like, can you communicate via the written word? Because a lot of our communication is via the written word, right? So we just want to get a feel for, would you feel comfortable in this environment? How would you do there?
Great. We even have little tests almost that we kind of go through. And obviously we're interested in the technical skills and background and things like that, but a lot of things like that. And that's where I get to kind of step in and talk about, here's what your day is going to look like. What does your day look like now? Is it anywhere close to this? How do we bridge that gap? Is that something that you're interested in doing? And we actually have had some really good hires who very much want to move to that type of situation from a large corporate environment or things like that, which I always find very interesting too, because they get the incubation pods for really great talent and somebody that wants to stand out a little bit more, have more input into the creative or the next step or the direction of a company, and they need to get out from underneath the 100 other people that are around them. And so I always find that very fascinating. So keeping an eye on time here, but also kind of coming back around full circle. Obviously, there is a big push in our work, but in just about every industry, for tools to become essential to what it is that you are doing. And in our environment, it's, things that you want to put in your developer's toolkit. What kind of tool set, or, what does your IDE look like? Right. And that's one of the questions I even ask in interviews. What does your ideal IDE look like? And so I know that this is an old question because of stuff like that, but it's becoming relevant again because of the advent of all these new tools like Honeybadger, and certainly with AI coming on the scene. Are we in any way, you think, creating a culture where dev teams are currently or could be soon relying on these third-party tools for monitoring or error tracking or code completion or whatever, instead of honing their own problem-solving skills?
Yeah, it's something that I've been thinking about. with AI assisted development over the past several months, as the models have gotten better, and my IDE setup, I use Cursor, and of course with the Vim extension installed because I can never give up my Vim key bindings.
Oh my, you remind me so much of a developer. I mean, it was like, you can have it when you pry it from my cold dead hands. I will be in Vim.
Totally. We're at an interesting inflection point, I think. And I think it's too early to say which way it's going to go, which makes it interesting. But you could definitely find yourself in a situation as a developer where you previously were used to writing code all day long, and that's what really brought you joy, and that was great, to now you're like a project manager of AI agents, and you're just reviewing code, and you're just trying to merge in all these disparate things. And one of those may be more fun than the other. But one thing I'm really interested in is skill atrophy. Like, do you get to a point where you become dependent on these things and you don't even try anymore? And I've seen this as I've done some experiments. It's like, okay, build me a thing. Like, I want to do this task. I'm going to let the AI go do it. And does it get to the point that I'm now not as curious? Because back to that TRS-80, when you were typing in those commands from the magazine, you understood very quickly what the difference between a 0 and an O was, right? Because one worked and one didn't, right?
Yep.
And that was a learning process for you. And so you're like, oh, okay, it matters, right? Or if you missed a character, then you're like, okay, I have to be very exact in this thing. But, you multiply that by a million, and these are the little things that we learn as part of our professional development over the years of building stuff. And do we have a regression if we're not having to pay as close attention to detail? Because, the AI will just generate the stuff I need. And if it doesn't get it right the first time, I'll just tell it, hey, go fix the thing. It'll iterate enough, and eventually it'll get to the right point, and then I can just throw it out there, and that's all good. That's a concern of mine because I love code quality, right? I love that book, Code Complete. And I think there's just a joy that comes from building something and building it well, just like a woodworker or a good machinist, right? And so I get a little concerned that we're giving up some of that for this potential benefit of productivity, right?
So how do we combat that? How have you combated that?
What I've done is I've kind of just checked myself. I'm like, hey, am I checking out of this process here? Am I letting it run the show, or am I still running the show as I work on these tasks? I've actually dialed back a little bit of my AI usage. So if I have a new task in front of me, I might say, hey, do I really want to throw this at the AI, or should I just do this, right? Do the work myself, right? Do the reps. And sometimes the answer is, yeah, I'm just going to do the reps. In fact, I was doing that yesterday. I was writing some code, converting from one language to another, which is great use of AI, right? And so I actually asked the AI to do it, and it spit out a whole bunch of code. And I'm like, okay, that's a lot. Let me put that aside for a minute and let me just go do it myself. And then I can compare notes, right? And just, again, putting those reps, I think, remembering to do that, having that discipline to do that, it's just like writing notes out by hand, right? It's a different experience than if you type in notes on a keyboard. There's different connections made in the brain. I'm convinced. Anyway, maybe there's no science for that, but I'm convinced. So I think, just doing the work, putting in the reps is valuable still, and remembering to do that. And sometimes not going to easy mode here. I'm going to keep it in hard mode for a little while.
I like that. Easy mode, hard mode. So we're kind of coming up on our time, Ben. What is next for you? What is next for you, Honeybadger, the different things that you're working on?
I, again, been doing Honeybadger for 13 years. I think I could do it for another 13 years.
That's great to hear.
It's fun.
Yeah.
When you're doing a thing that you love, why would you stop doing it? Well, I guess if there was a life-changing amount of money on the table, I guess that could be a reason why. But I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. Keep building code. Keep trying to make developers happy, because I am a developer, so that works out for me too, right? But keep building and keep trying to run a great business. I love entrepreneurship. That's really who I am. That's one of the core pieces of who I am. And I'm not necessarily the best at it. I'm not Rockefeller. I'm not Carnegie or anything. But my own little slice of the world, I like what I do, and I get paid well to do it. So I'm going to keep doing that.
Awesome. Ben, it's been super informative. I really appreciate the breadth. I know we've kind of gone all over the map a little bit here, but really appreciate you sharing your time and your insights on all these different topics. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure.
So we've been talking with Ben Curtis, co-founder of Honeybadger, among many other things. Ben, where and how can people reach you?
Well, definitely check out honeybadger.io. If you go to the About Us page, you can see all my socials there. I got LinkedIn, Blue Sky, whatever you prefer. That's, probably the best way to keep track of me.
Good deal. Special thanks as always to our listeners. If you do like what you're hearing, you've got ideas for the show, or just want to tell us what's on your mind, throw a review our way. Hit subscribe if you are so inclined, and we will see you all next time on SaaS That App.
Thanks for cruising along with us on SaaS That App. We hope you grabbed some insights that were inspiring, actionable, or at least entertaining. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review.
Until next time, keep building,
keep growing, and keep those apps sassy.